I was gonna kick this video off bright and early, but it got blocked and returned for a touchdown. Welcome in, everybody, to my Week 4 NFL Power Rankings. A wild, exciting Week 3 to react to. Lots of movement in the rankings here today. Looking forward to this one. If you guys could take just a second to hit that like button as we get started, it really does help my channel. It's a free and easy thing to show your support there. I also want to remind you guys, this is more snapshot analysis reacting to the week. If you want my full in-depth analysis to every game, make sure you check out my podcast, The Fully Inflated Football Show. I do upload that here on the main channel, but you can also search Fully Inflated wherever you get your audio podcasts, and I'll see you guys there. But let's go ahead and get started. At the bottom, the New Orleans Saints. They did it again here for the second year in a row, kind of pump faking us within the first 2 weeks of the season into thinking that they aren't actually that bad. Only this time around, they are actually the worst team in the NFL. But then at number 31, the Tennessee Titans just continue to kind of creep down. Not that they had that far to drop anyway. I think everybody at this point is ready to see a different head coach get a crack at this. It just has never really felt like Coach Callahan is fit for the job here in Tennessee. Now you've got your divisional rival kind of poking fun at you, saying, we knew before the game even started that this team wasn't prepared or ready to play. So I'm definitely out on this version of the Tennessee Titans until they can show us some form of life here. And then the New York Giants falling back into the bottom tier here after a heroic loss last week led to them climbing out of it. But just the offense going right back to ineptitude, and honestly, this defense, they're just not as good as they could be. You know, the Shane Bowen experience continues to be disappointing in my opinion. Now there's early talks of them going to Jackson Dart. I mean, maybe they strike gold and found a diamond in the rough there that can save their season, but that was kind of the fear, right? Was that they might go to him a little bit too early and kind of just waste that draft pick. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that was one of the fears. I guess that does, though, kind of become the one interesting thing remaining for this Giants team until they show us something else. But that does round out the bottom tier. Those are my bottom three clear booty teams. But this next tier, our not good tier, is a big one this week. I actually have 8 teams in this tier. Call it your NFL lower class at this point in time. But it's going to start with the Miami Dolphins at number 29. Got to give them respect at least for coming out and fighting against the Buffalo Bills. Tua turned the ball over, strikes again, though, at the end. At the end of the day, don't really have any new thoughts on where the Dolphins are at after another loss this week. But then the New York Jets at number 28. Hey, at least you know that your head coach, Aaron Glenn, is one hell of a dancer. That was an epic moment in the blocked field goal that made this game scary close against the Bucs. I think the Jets do deserve a lot of credit for showing fight and coming back in that game when it felt dead to rights 3 quarters through that game. But Tyrod Taylor did some good stuff at quarterback. I still think this defense, we're waiting on the Aaron Glenn rejuvenation of the defense. They have not played well on that side of the ball. This is not a good football team, but they do play the Dolphins this week. So unless there's a tie, one of these two teams is going to get their first win this season on Monday Night Football. Then the New England Patriots. The AFC least stays the AFC least. The Patriots also dropping down a spot in the rankings with a loss over Pittsburgh. This is what we talked about with Drake May, right? Like last week against Miami, he played the most consistent, sharp game of his career. The hope was that he could build off of that and really start to get some momentum going. And unfortunately, he goes right back to that inconsistent product. Yes, his running backs had a couple of costly fumbles in this game too, but Drake May was not pretty. Ironically, the actual interception that he threw wasn't really on him. It was a batted pass by Cam Hayward down by the goal line. But Drake May did get away with 2 interceptions. One was negated by a penalty that had nothing to do with his decision, and one was negated by Chuck Clark dropping the ball. So he's got to take better care of the football. He's got to play better within the structure of this offense as the rest of this team continues to try and figure themselves out. But it has not been a pretty start, I think, for the Mike Vrabel era in New England. Then the Raiders at number 26, their fun start, their week 1 win against the Patriots feels like a decade ago at this point. The defense completely in shambles this week against Washington. Geno actually, I thought, played pretty well, but they've got to learn how to play complementary football and put things back together here before things get ugly for the Raiders. Then the Bengals at number 25, falling another 5 spots and another tier here this week. Just a disastrous effort. I think Zach Taylor hot seat conversations are going to pick up quickly if they can't turn this thing back around and look like a competitive football team under Jake Browning. They've got to, protect the football, come up with a better game plan offensively. They've got to somehow fix their offensive line. They've got to figure things out on defense. This team is not in a good place right now, despite being 2-1. Then the Carolina Panthers getting just the biggest of wins in their home opener against Atlanta. They win 30-0 in a week where everything was really clicking and looked like a best case scenario of what you might have hoped for the Panthers out the gate. And I think it is worth at least remembering, like the Panthers did this last year too, where they were just horrible for the first couple weeks of the season and then settled in. I think that's at least noteworthy here. But Bryce Young starting to get some of that confidence back. T-Mac looks just as unbelievable as you could have hoped for. I'm proud to say that I held him up there with the highest of standards, right next to guys like Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter in this draft class. The fact that the NFL overthought this and the Panthers got him where they did is incredible. And even if the numbers don't fully show it on the stat sheet, I mean, they're funneling their offense through him. There was a defensive pass interference that he drew. There was a couple other near connections that I think him and Bryce are only going to continue to get better at. The dude catches everything. He's an incredible route runner. The run after catch is there. They're throwing him tunnel screens, trying to just, tap into his ability. He does it all. He's such a spectacular football player. But how about this Panthers defense? They really should have been where I started things with them for this week, shutting out the Atlanta Falcons, getting a pass rush going. I love the way Ejiro Evero is moving guys around and blitzing at times. But the secondary's playing better. Trayvon Merrick has been a stabilizing force on the back end for them. Huge week for the Panthers. Their upcoming schedule, by the way, they play the Patriots, Dolphins, Cowboys, and Jets. Things could get interesting for Carolina here. I'm very excited for this next month of Panthers football. Keep pounding, baby. But then the Dallas Cowboys dropping down 4 spots and dropping down into this not good tier. The defense is just a huge hurdle for this team, and right now CeeDee Lamb is going to miss the next couple of weeks. That's a huge blow to this offense that, as we saw in week 2, when they have CeeDee Lamb out there, I do still think Dak is playing at a very high level this year and is getting some unfair criticism for the loss in Chicago this week. When they have CeeDee Lamb out there, they're going to be a tough team to beat because they can put points up. But as you guys know, I do account for injuries in these rankings. It is a big loss to lose CeeDee Lamb for the next few weeks. So that certainly plays a factor, but this is also about the defense and the issues they're showing on that side of the ball too. Trayvon Diggs is hard to watch at this stage in his career. Just can't really cover anyone right now. I don't think Dallas is on a trajectory to get a top 5 draft pick or anything like that. But yeah, at this point in time, they're just not a particularly good football team. And then the Cleveland Browns at number 22 here with a 7-spot jump in the rankings, climbing out of that bottom tier. Probably an overreaction on my end after they eventually got blown out by the Ravens last week. But kind of with hindsight here, they did still make Lamar uncomfortable for 3 quarters in that game. They very much should have beaten the Bengals week 1 as well. And now, basically hanging around against the Green Bay Packers off the effort of their defense, and then showing the grit at the end of this game to capitalize on just the worst of Jordan Love mistakes and blocking a field goal and then going and making the 55-yard field goal that they couldn't make those game-winning field goals against the Bengals week 1. But at the end of the day, the Browns have an argument for having the best defense in the NFL. This is the 2023 Browns defense, only they're also stopping the run. Carson Schwessinger, their rookie linebacker, is just blowing me away. I liked him as a prospect. I didn't think he'd be this good out the gate, but their run fits are so much more sound now in year 3 or 4, whatever it is, of Jim Schwartz here. I think year 3. I don't know if the Browns are good and they still have a horrible offense with Joe Flacco, who was booed in this game, and they were showing shots of Dylan Gabriel on the sideline, questioning if he should come in this game against Green Bay. It certainly isn't all perfect, but just as we saw this week, that defense is going to give this team a chance to beat pretty much anybody. And that does round out that tier there. Before we go to our next tier, I want to thank the sponsor for today's video, SeatGeek. Guys, if you're itching to go see your favorite NFL team, or maybe you want to go support your baseball team in the final week of the pennant race here, or go catch them in a playoff matchup, or go to a concert, whatever it is you're looking to do to go have some fun, SeatGeek has got you covered with the best market competitive prices, the best app, the best user interface. They color code every single seat, so you know if you just look for the green dots, you are getting the most bang for your buck. You'll get your tickets right in the SeatGeek app. You don't have to climb through communications and email chains and have this stressful situation as you approach the gate. You know you've got your tickets safe and sound right there on the SeatGeek app. And now, if you use code TFG10 at checkout, you can save up to $20 on your next purchase. So thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's Power Rankings, and have fun wherever you guys might be headed. All right, let's go to tier 5 for these rankings. Still titling this the mid/soul searching tier, but this is kind of the tier that is eventually going to turn into my Schrodinger's box of cats tier, which has become a bit legendary for those that have watched the series. We'll get there eventually, but not quite that time in the season for Schrodinger's box of cats. Excited for that time. Anyway, let's start this tier off with the Atlanta Falcons, dropping down 6 spots and dropping down into this tier, back into this tier, really, at the number 21 spot. Really just a gut punch week for the Falcons. I don't know that there was a team that had a more disappointing week than Atlanta, going into Charlotte and just getting trounced on both sides of the ball. Michael Penix is starting to raise some questions within this offense. Just, some things are off in terms of them knowing what they want to do with their passing game and Michael Penix executing the passing game. It doesn't help that his accuracy, it's not bad, but it can be spotty at times. Even when he's making the right read, he's not always putting the ball where it needs to be. And then you certainly hope for more from this Falcons defense that looked great in week 2 at Minnesota. Was it a flash in the pan? Can they get back to doing that? Those are going to be the questions for Atlanta moving forward as they fall to 1-2 here. Then the Houston Texans at number 20. Atlanta might have had the most disappointing week, but Houston has got to be the most disappointing team on the season so far. Outside of Joe Burrow got hurt for the Bengals. That's obviously disappointing, but this is the Texans' fault, right? We all talked about the questionable decisions on the offensive line to trade away Laramie Tunsil and then not really do anything major to address the O-line outside of bringing in some journeyman vets and drafting Arianti Ursary in the second round, who looks horrible, unfortunately. Sadly, it's really trending towards the Texans breaking C.J. Stroud and everything we saw from him looking so spectacular in that rookie season. The defense is holding up their end of the bargain, but it's been tough to watch this Texans team, and I can't even really view this as a good football team right now. But then the team that defeated the Texans and firmly climbed above them in the AFC South standings there, the Jacksonville Jaguars climbed to 2-1. And what's interesting about the Jags is, they were very close to beating the Bengals and could be 3-0. I know you can do that for a lot of teams, but what I'm getting at here is that the Jags have been one of the more fascinating teams where certainly myself, and I think most people, didn't have super high expectations for the Jags to be this kind of playoff surprise team here in year 1 of the Liam Cohen era. But I'm fascinated at their potential to maybe be that. I think Aaron Campanelli is doing a phenomenal job with this defense. The D-line is living up to their billing. These linebackers are flying around. And that's really without getting contributions from Travis Hunter, who continues to struggle at cornerback. How about Jordan Lewis this week? So the Jags defense is really impressing me, and their run game, I think, has been good on the season. It's not going to be easy to run all over the Texans, but Byshell Tootin to me looks fantastic. Every time that dude touches the ball, he finds a way to impress me in a different way. So keep an eye on him. Like a lot of reminiscent vibes with what happened with Bucky Irving last year, where he had some other backs ahead of him on the depth chart. In this case, Travis Etienne, who's not a bad player, but just similar vibes. Liam Cohen there as well. Obviously, the connection with Bucky Irving. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm crazy, but I see it with Byshell Tootin. But the Jags passing game is still super inconsistent, and if they can figure that out as the season goes on here, with Liam Cohen being new there, that would be the key to success for the Jags to actually be a pretty interesting playoff caliber team. So they continue to hold my attention here and steadily climb up in these rankings. But then the Chicago Bears at number 18. There we go. There's the Ben Johnson effort, dialing up trick plays, getting Caleb to play up to his potential, getting these rookies that he handpicked, Luther Burden and Colston Loveland, involved in the offense. Hell yes, this is what we signed up for the Chicago Bears 2025 experience. And the defense is going to continue to be an issue for them, but at least showing some fight, some impressive turnovers with Tyreek Stevenson just taking the ball away from Javonte Williams, a diving pick from Tremaine Edmonds. They're at least showing the requisite effort on that side of the ball. So a huge week for the Bears, kind of placing themselves back into the framework of this NFL season after a just horrible start. So welcome back, Bears fans. And welcome, by the way, to the Bears 2025 rookie draft class. Then the Arizona Cardinals at number 17. I mean, they've been the most just kind of like status quo team this season, where they've kind of checked the floor raising boxes, if you will, as far as being competitive on defense, kind of having that ball control style offense that they had last year. But struggling to kind of get over the hump, whether it's showing offensive explosion that we've been waiting for this Kyler Marv connection to get there. It still is not there. Marv is really struggling right now, frankly. This is back-to-back weeks where I would put the blame on Marvin Harrison in that conversation, not Kyler Murray, who I think has played much better than the box score would indicate the last 2 weeks. A lot of big drops this week for Arizona and these pass catchers. Someone on my Patreon Discord was suggesting that this team should be making calls about Tyreek Hill. I would really love that as a fit to help ignite this offense a little bit. So we're definitely still waiting around for them to take that leap offensively. But man, this was a disappointing week for Arizona too, because that game, they blew it against the Niners. They get a safety with 5 minutes to go, and they were in a prime position to just run out the clock and win this game. Now, obviously, James Conner getting hurt is a huge blow to this team's ability to like grind out close games in that type of game script. And they're going to have to, decide if they can lean on Trey Benson in those types of situations. But they weren't able to ground out the clock. You get the drop from Zay Jones, or at least the failure to come down with a contested catch by Zay Jones. They punt the ball away, and then Jonathan Gannon just plays like squishy conservative defense that allows Mac Jones to just keep taking these 8-yard completions and get themselves into field goal range. It was a complete collapse by the Cardinals that at least could have shown some character this week. So they are like kind of by the default of the Falcons and Texans having even worse weeks. The Cardinals are climbing up one spot in the power rankings, but they're just kind of hovering around the definition of mid, right? Pretty sure they've been in this tier all the way through. And you got to be disappointed in your Cardinals this week if you're a fan of that team. But they will round out that mid tier there. Let's get to our tier 4 here in the playoff fringe tier. And welcome back, Vikings fans. Last week, they had as bad of a loss as you could have possibly imagined, not to mention the injuries. Felt like they were really starting to feel dare I say, insurmountable for this defense. But they come back, and Brian Flores has an absolute statement win over the Bengals, just forcing turnovers left and right. Isaiah Rodgers bursting onto the scene. Really fun to see that for him after the gambling suspension and kind of getting forgotten about for the most part. Pretty crazy to think that he was the Eagles' CB4 last year. But that dude locked up Defensive Player of the Week by halftime. Just an incredible performance. And the Carson Wentz thing is going to become an interesting conversation here. It was just one game, and a game where they didn't have to lean on him, right? This game got out of hand and got out of hand early, but he did look better than J.J. McCarthy to me. Just much more comfortable climbing the pocket, making those intermediate throws. Granted, he had more of a pocket to climb with Christian Darrisaw back out there. But, you know, they're going on this 2-week, Euro trip here. I'm jealous. I wish I could go on a 2-week Euro trip. Quick segue, I am going to Mexico at the end of this week for a brief vacation, so we'll see if there will be a power rankings next week. We'll see how I'm feeling. I might do it from the beach from my phone, maybe. Could be fun. Anyway, back to the Vikings. They're going on this Euro trip. I would imagine that they wouldn't, play Carson Wentz this week, which they already said he's going to do, and then put McCarthy in for the week 5 game. I would imagine they're looking at this as a 2-week tryout for Carson Wentz to be their starting quarterback the rest of the way. But again, that can change depending on how Wentz plays against a good Steelers pass rush. So it's just going to be fun to monitor this situation. But I'm not ruling out the possibility that Carson Wentz could have something like the Sam Darnold revival from last year. I don't know that it'll be quite as good as Darnold was, but something in the same narrative, right? So the Vikings have become a very fascinating team moving forward. As we know, this is a ridiculously loaded roster and one of the best coached teams in the entire league. So they get back into the kind of playoff fringe category for me at that number 16 spot. But then the Pittsburgh Steelers going to New England, getting the win in what felt like much more of a Pittsburgh Steelers style victory, forcing turnovers on the defense, not having to lean on Aaron Rodgers. That was always the plan, right? Just run the offense, make a couple throws in a couple big spots, and let's play Steelers football. That is exactly what happened. If this team can continue to live in that world, I think we are again talking about a 10-11 win Mike Tomlin style football team that should be playing football into January. And we get to see this matchup, by the way, number 15 versus number 16, bright and early on Sunday. And a special shout out to my viewers in Ireland. I hope you guys enjoy getting a game out there in Dublin this week. Then we have the Seattle Seahawks at number 14. They have certainly surprised me as well this year. Not so much with the defense. I figured things would continue to get better and better there with Mike Macdonald in year 2 there. I love Mike Macdonald, and they're doing it right now without some key pieces on defense too. They were out a couple members of the secondary, and they tormented the Saints this week. But it's really about JSN continuing to get better and better. He went from questionable rookie season to bona fide stud in year 2 to superstar here in year 3. The guy literally catches everything when the ball is in his area. He's so good at winning body positioning. The definition of ball skills through and through. And he's very quickly established a rapport with Sam Darnold. I'm just blown away with that connection right there. The Darnold to JSN aspect, basically carrying this offense. So that's really where Seattle has impressed me. And, they're climbing 2 more spots in the rankings and approaching the idea that this is a legitimate playoff caliber team. And with the Niners here at number 13, dropping 2 spots, despite the win, but, a costly win. Losing Nick Bosa, one of the best, most impactful non-quarterbacks in the sport. And their first 2 wins came on the heels of Nick Bosa closing games out, doing his Mariano Rivera impression. As you guys know, injuries play a huge factor for me. And even if the Niners climb to 3-0, and I'm super impressed by what Robert Saleh has been able to do with this defense, and I do still have a ton of respect for Kyle Shanahan, and I still have the Niners ranked 13th here, and kind of as a fringe playoff caliber team, but at some point the dam is going to break, and too many injuries is too many injuries. I know George Kittle should be back. You do get Brock Purdy back, hopefully this week. At some point, you're hoping Ayuk can make their return. And if and when that happens, maybe the offense can become so dynamic and the defense can stabilize as at least an average unit without Nick Bosa. That can still be a playoff caliber team, but right now, they don't have those guys back healthy offensively. This is not a juggernaut offense, and I do not anticipate that this defense is going to be as good without Nick Bosa, so I have to drop them down a tier. They dropped 2 spots in the power rankings as well. Still a respectable spot, but they've got even more challenges ahead of them with that injury. And that rounds out our playoff fringe tier there. And we now climb to the true playoff caliber tier. Although our number 12 team here, I am giving a lot of benefit of the doubt for what they accomplished last year. And they are holding on to this spot in this tier and at number 12 by a thread here. Quite literally, like by a thread, their last 2 games have been close game losses against good football teams. The Colts and the Chargers, there are a couple plays, a couple field goals as well away from, feeling much better about them here at this number 12 spot. I still trust this defense quite a bit. They've played great in 2 out of 3 games. The Colts did get them. It's going to happen in today's NFL. You're going to run into some weeks that are better than others on defense, but they swarmed Justin Herbert in this game. Nick Bonito is fantastic. I'm glad they paid him. I do. I still trust this defense and Vance Joseph for them to be, help them be a highly competitive football team. And offensively, it does feel like they're close, but they're just not very dynamic right now. I wish I had a better answer for what's kind of missing with the offense right now. That's going to be up to Sean Payton to figure out. But again, I have a lot of trust in Sean Payton to do that. So at least for now, the Broncos holding on to this spot by a thread, but kind of putting them on the hot seat here to come out and have a convincing win as they are an 8-point favorite against the Bengals on Monday Night Football. Go remind us why we were excited about the Broncos coming into this season, Denver. But the Indianapolis Colts climbing up ahead of Denver, who they did beat last week, but another just dominant victory this week against the Tennessee Titans. Obviously not an opponent that I think very highly of, but when you're just boat racing teams, it does reach a point where that it doesn't really matter. And the Colts have had 2 of the more dominant victories on this season, as well as defeating another team that I think highly of here in Denver, ranked just behind them there. But yeah, Indiana Jones, how fun has this been? Even as someone that, I felt like I was the high man on the Indianapolis Colts coming into this season. I ranked them 20th. I kept tweeting out the stats about, their record with Gardner Minshew and Joe Flacco and all this stuff, and defending Shane Steichen and defending their decision to go with Daniel Jones. I'm very proud to say that I did that. I felt like I was kind of an island defending this Colts team where everybody was very down on this team heading into the year. But at the same time, I still did not see these heights as possible with Daniel Jones. He continues to play so well. And I'm excited, too, for the defense. They get Latu back. He looked great this week. And then Shavarius Ward coming off the concussion. Anarumo getting more and more time with this defense. I'm excited to see where things can go on that side of the ball because I'm not ready to say it's a good defense quite yet. But if they can get there, as we know, it can take time for a defensive coordinator to really settle in with his new team. If they can get there with what they're doing on offense, the Colts are legitimate players in the AFC. I don't want to go as far as saying the SB word, but a team that could absolutely play spoiler to another team with those types of expectations, and maybe something could get crazy and they go on a big run. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit there. But this does, to me, look and feel like a legitimate playoff team at this point in time. Then the Washington Commanders at number 10. Very impressive bounce back week with Marcus Mariota starting this week. It wasn't in the cards for them to climb in the rankings for me. It's not always about what you do. It's about what the teams around you do, and everybody else around them, for the most part, won or are just still teams that I think are better than Washington. But regardless, just the Cliff Kingsbury, Dan Quinn era here in Washington, I'm running out of words to describe how impressive it is what they get out of this team. I mean, you're out there now another week with Marcus Mariota like coming back from the dead, just looking so efficient within this offense, running the ball left and right on teams with Jeremy McNichols, who's underrated player, by the way, but Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who I really liked as a 7th-round pick, but to get him in the 7th round and, kind of bank on him, trading away at Brian Robinson, like giving him those opportunities, I really like that. And continuing to have a defense that's better than the sum of its parts. It wasn't all perfect against the Raiders this week, but just very impressed by Washington. Definitely a playoff caliber team. And I'm excited to see them get Jaden Daniels back. But it's nice to know like they don't have to rush him back either. Like they can let him fully heal so that they can really hit the ground running and try to, climb up in terms of being more of a real Super Bowl contender in the NFC, which I'm not quite ready to make that leap yet with them. We are still a week away from them not being very competitive at all against Green Bay, but obviously a great stabilizing bounce back week here against the Raiders. And then the Bucs at number 9, they escape against the Jets. It's a tough conversation with the Bucs because it's very reminiscent of last year where I continue to just be super impressed by Baker Mayfield here in Tampa Bay. Another year where they lose their coordinator and he's still out there just dunking on teams, playing honestly like an MVP candidate this year. Mike Evans hasn't been that good for this team. There's no Chris Godwin. He does have Emeka Egbuka making some great plays. And Bucky Irving absolutely deserves a shout out again this week. He's untackleable. But you're talking about this team being down to 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th string offensive linemen. Them still being able to move the ball. And Todd Bowles has a little bit of an it factor to him this year. I loved what they did last week, scheming up that pass rush against the Texans. He's like making funny comments in the media. I don't know that I don't know if you guys saw the comments about him and Durham Payne hugging in the tunnel. Very funny. Go look it up. But at the same time, like this team is going through the ringer in terms of injuries, which happened last year. Losing Kalijah Kancey and Cody Mock for the season is a huge blow, and I am worried about that. But at the same time, like Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin should be back soon. Like there's some cavalry on the way, and can those additions of legitimate superstar players like project this team into a state where I feel better about them as like a real Super Bowl contender in the NFC. Like they've had some tough, gritty wins against teams like Atlanta and the Texans and the Jets. I don't think they're quite up into that next category yet, but I'm at least fascinated to see if they can get there when they get some of those guys back. Also, their secondary is playing super well this year, and it's an excellent group on paper too. So they need a quick shout out before we move on to our next team here and into the next tier, which is our Super Bowl contenders tier, which opens up with the Kansas City Chiefs. They take care of business against the Giants this week. The only thing I want to say here is I think Patrick Mahomes was excellent this week. I know it's crazy to say Patrick Mahomes is excellent, but there's been some conversations going back in the other direction on Mahomes, but I mean, he's out there with Tyquan Thornton and Travis Kelce kind of not looking great this year. The offensive line's nothing special. What he's doing with his legs, extending plays, protecting the football in this infrastructure, very impressive. And this week against the Giants especially, I was just watching that game like, he's still in there, man. The Patrick Mahomes we know and love is absolutely still in there. So big win against a bad team in the Giants this week. So they're staying put at number 8, but obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, I for a good reason did not take them out of the Super Bowl contenders tier last week, and they maintain that spot here heading into week 4. But then the Chargers at number 7, also staying put in this ranking. They get an impressive close game victory against the Denver Broncos. You know, I guess based on these rankings, what I'm saying is like that was not a super surprising outcome to me. That with the Chargers at 7, the Broncos at 12, both teams staying put in those spots. The Chargers win a close competitive game against Denver. But it's a testament and a reminder that the Chargers are a very complete, incredibly well-coached football team with a Justin Herbert playing now at an MVP level. And I don't know how this happened that I'm going at it with Chargers fans yet again, But you're seeing, the Justin Herbert fan club emerge through and being like, Justin Herbert's always been this guy. We always knew it. And it's like, yeah, he's always shown those flashes. But to me, what he's doing this year with the comfort inside this offense, consistently making those plays with his feet and extending plays in big spots for this team, that's been the difference between Justin Herbert and your true elite quarterbacks over the years, in my opinion. But this year, he's making those plays on a consistent basis, and that's a huge difference maker for this Chargers team. And he's got some of these playmakers on the back end, too, that he can trust. Quentin Johnston, I mean, what a breakout for him. Getting Keenan Allen back. It's really fun to watch him within this offense, and Jesse Minter and this defense just continue to blow me away. No Khalil Mack this week, and they still come out and make that Broncos offense uncomfortable a lot of that game. So, yeah, Chargers are a really good football team, man. Not the most loaded roster, not going to be your Super Bowl favorites or anything like that, but they are one of the better teams in the AFC. And then the Los Angeles Rams at number 6. A tale of two halves against the Eagles, right? You saw the best of the Rams in the first half against the Eagles with their front seven and the D line, like just playing really well against that Eagles front. The Chris Shula effect with the way that he's able to help but help elevate that defensive line and get the most out of that pass rush. And the defense overall, it was just a super impressive start to the game. The Matthew Stafford of it all, their ability to bounce back from an ugly interception to start the game, but just brushing it off and throwing haymakers to Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and the run game with Kyron Williams and even Blake Corum. Like, you saw the best of the Rams in a really big spot, obviously, in Philadelphia, the biggest game that they're going to have in their regular season from a matchup perspective. But then you see the weaknesses show up a little bit more in the second half, too. The lack of mobility from Matthew Stafford, I think, impacting their short game and red zone capabilities, and some of the issues with the defense, where the run defense did start to dissipate a little bit into the fourth quarter, but especially their issues in the secondary, not having guys that can match up against superstar receivers like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. You felt that for the Rams, and the Eagles woke up and exploited it in the second half. All that said, if they don't have 2 field goals blocked, they just went into Philadelphia and won. So I'm not going to lower the Rams. In fact, my opinion on who they are as a football team hasn't changed. It's just I would say everything we just broke down, evaluating their strengths and weaknesses, that's where I was at on this team, but now it has been brought even further to the forefront. I think we have an even stronger feeling of who the Rams are, for better or worse. But I do like them in this number 6 spot. And, even though you wish that they finished that game off and were walking out of that game 3-0, feeling like the best team in the NFC, knocking off the Eagles, that would be great if you were a Rams fan. But I still think it's not a complete loss in terms of morale and how you should view this football team. As for the Green Bay Packers here at number 5, dropping back into tier 2 after last week, I did jump them up into the Super Bowl frontrunners category after they dominated Washington. They obviously have an incredibly disappointing loss against Cleveland this week. I don't think it's time for full-scale panic for Green Bay. It was obviously an ugly loss, and they deserve to come out of that top tier because you saw the difference between a Baltimore Ravens team last week, who is in that top tier, their ability to overcome a challenging matchup against the Browns in week 2. You see the difference between them and Green Bay, and really the Packers offense, and that's obviously an area with the Packers offense. And a Jordan Love who unfortunately is prone to big mistakes in a big spot. Essentially taking a long sword and driving it through your stomach in terms of hurting yourself in this game. If he doesn't throw that pick and the Packers punt it away, there's every reason to believe that the Packers defense gets one more stop in a day where the Browns could not move the ball. I do think that the Packers came out and took the approach of let's just have a conservative game plan and try to get out of Cleveland with a win on the heels of our defense. If you look at the Jordan Love passing map, he attempted 1 pass of more than 8 yards. This was what they set out to do, and for 58 minutes, it was going to work. But when you have that mentality of playing down to your competition and not having the confidence to come out and throw the ball around the yard, you kind of show your own ass to the entire NFL, and you're a couple crippling mistakes away from blowing that game, and that's what we saw. Now, they go to Dallas this week, Sunday Night Football. Say whatever you want about this team. I do still remember the first 2 weeks where they dominated two great football teams. I'm anticipating them to get back on track. I'm not in panic mode against Green Bay, but I think we do need to see them get back on track before I put them up into that Super Bowl frontrunner tier with four other teams here that have a much more established track record of playing at that level than Green Bay here. But let's talk about those top four teams, and it's really the usual suspects here, with Detroit obviously getting back into this category. But we got to start this tier with the Ravens at number 4. So they are a 1-2 football team in my top tier of teams, but two of their losses are to Detroit and Buffalo, who are also in this tier. So I'm not panicking about the Ravens. And the majority of this game against Detroit, I'm watching this just blown away by the level that Lamar Jackson is playing at, and loving that they have like these ancillary playmakers now. Guys like, DeAndre Hopkins and Tylan Wallace, and Rashad Bateman's playing really well this year. Mark Andrews getting his confidence back. Felt like he had the best game he's had in a long time here in Baltimore. So there's still a lot to like with the Ravens. But you do have to raise questions about this defense right now. That D-line got walked up and down the field, not just in terms of run defense and the inability to stop the just inside ground game. Like Detroit, for the most part, just had duo for days and just smashed the Ravens' interior D-line. And that was with the theoretical weakness of the Detroit Lions. Maybe it's proven to be more of a strength as the season goes on, but that's with Graham Glasgow and Tate Ratledge and Christian Mahogany. Like, even without Justin Madubuike, you should hope to have moderate success in that matchup, and they got obliterated. Not a great look for this Ravens defense. They're not getting contributions from Mike Green. Can't say I'm too sad about that. But like the fact that Kyle Van Noy is out and you feel like this defense doesn't have a chance, that's not a good sign. So we did see this last year. The Ravens defense sucked to start, and then they figured things out and made some adjustments. We'll see if they can do that. Hopefully they can get Nnamdi Madubuike back, and that should help. It's still a team that I think can win shootouts, and if Derrick Henry can just not fumble in crunch time, this team might be 3-0. Like, that was just, the biggest of mistakes and the biggest of spots again here against Detroit. It's frustrating that we're having similar, late game, blown game conversations with Baltimore yet again here, but I still look at this as a very good football team, and I wouldn't be panicking after that loss if I were a Ravens fan. But Detroit, that Monday night game was much more about Detroit making a statement, saying, I know we got blown out by the Packers week 1, but getting knocked down, brushing it off, and standing right back up and say, do not count us out. In fact, we are still the kings of the North. The last 2 weeks have felt every bit like a Ben Johnson coached offense. The run, pass, even trick play balance has totally been there. The Dan Campbell go for it mentality. I love going for it on that fourth down, just leaning into the identity of this team. Jared Goff, a phenomenal night in Baltimore. Amon-Ra St. Brown just continuing to threaten my perspective on just how elite can a slot wide receiver be. I struggle with this idea of I don't think a slot wide receiver can really be in the conversation with a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson, but maybe Amon-Ra's just so great at it that it's time that I give him that respect. It's a different conversation for a different video for sure, but regardless, he is just unbelievable. And look, man, this defense is still out there playing without one of their best players in Aleem McNeil. And Aiden Hutchinson, a statement second half against Baltimore as well. So just not enough credit to go around for Detroit in the biggest of weeks for them. Welcome back to the Super Bowl frontrunners tier, Lions fans. Then the Buffalo Bills at number 2. Not a ton to add on them this week. You know, they take care of business against Miami. I don't think there's a team in the NFL that has a better understanding of who they are and how they're going to win football games, between their ball control offense with Josh Allen, how they protect the football, and for better or worse, the style of defense that they want to play with. Sorry, Bills fans, if you were earning for more analysis this week, but you took care of business against Miami. It's on to week 4 for them, business as usual. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, maintaining this number 1 ranking. This team is just so hard to kill, right? Even if they're on the ground, bleeding out, can't fight back, they can still find a way to escape with a victory. And that's what we saw this week against the Rams. But it's not just the toughness factor and the fact that this team, I love the term that the broadcasters were using in this game, the fact that the Eagles have transformers out there. I mean, yeah, A.J. Brown, Jordan Davis, some of the biggest freaks in the NFL, and they dominated in this game against a Rams team that is built with the opposite philosophy, right? The Rams are known for taking the physical rejects and getting the most out of their skill sets. Not in the second half of this game. It was a takeover of A.J. Brown against undersized corners. It was a physical takeover of Jordan Davis over a day 3 Bo Limmer who lacks a lot of the traits you look for on the offensive line. And it was on the 4th down run stop from Jordan Davis. And then he also just dominated Bo Limmer on the field goal block too. So there's obviously that aspect with the Eagles. We know about the talent that they have. But I also think this was a big week of getting over a mental hurdle for the Eagles as well. The first 2 weeks, they couldn't really figure out how to pass the ball. And even in the first half of this game, their passing game was a complete mess, from the play calling to A.J. Brown not looking like himself to Jalen Hurts not really seeing the field well, maybe scrambling a little bit too much, not hanging in the pocket and making some harder throws. Well, with their backs against the wall, they cracked and figured it out. Yes, A.J. Brown is a transformer, and you're not going to get him against a 160-pound Emmanuel Forbes or a 5'9" Darius Williams every single matchup, but that obviously helps. But Jalen Hurts really impressed me in the second half, beating this Rams team with his arm. A lot of the smaller, heady decisions in between the big A.J. Brown plays really stood out to me to help keep those drives alive and lead that comeback. And the clutch factor of Jalen Hurts as well, that matters too. Like, nothing is going to phase this guy. So Jalen Hurts absolutely deserves his credit as well from this week. Obviously someone that I have pushed back on the Jalen Hurts hype quite a bit, but we saw the best parts of Jalen Hurts in the second half of this game, and that's huge for this passing game at large to get back on the map for this NFL season. And the Eagles absolutely deserve to maintain their number 1 ranking here. So there are your Week 4 NFL Power Rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, we're not done reacting to Week 3. I will be back tomorrow with my full reactions to every game on the Fully Inflated Football podcast. But until then, thank you for watching. Please drop a like on the way out, and I'll see you guys later. Cheers.